was reading not so long time ago that according to McKinsey, there is approximately 70% of companies, the big ones, that are implementing or are doing some kind of sustainability project during the year. And funny enough, this is a significant increase from back in 2019, where there was only 40% of companies that were planning. So it's almost kind of the double of companies who have started considering this sustainability. The increasing focus on sustainability is a positive development for business and, of course, the environment, but is more than just the environmental impact. And it is time to clarify how organizations are doing it. My guest today has worked with hundreds of organizations wanting transformation. And part of the list of what CEOs want is quite often, let's change, let's be a little bit more sustainable. But again, what remains a mystery is this definition, what it is sustainability. Let me introduce you to my guest today, Abeer Raza. He's the Chief Marketing Officer and founding partner of TekRevol, a digital transformation company that is listed in the Inc. 5000. And what is quite impressive is 829% growth in just 4 years. That is quite impressive. I also saw that they have venture also in the side of venture capital supporting startups, which is quite awesome. There is kind of a lot of innovation behind, and part of these innovation strategies for organizations is also sustainability. Abeer, I'm so happy to have you with me. Before anything, I just wanted to know, how the hell did you end up founding TekRevol?
No, you make it sound a lot more exciting than it is, Ivan. Thank you so much. I'm going to use that intro for later podcasts. Yeah, I mean, how do we start TekRevol? So I started with one of my co-founders who we used to work together with. I think it was built majorly on ethos in terms of how do we want to do things differently from all other service companies that were in our space. And we started with the one employee who's still with us at this point, I think after 7 years now. Yeah, I think overall, the idea was, how do we build a net positive company? And that kind of leads into the sustainability aspect as well. How do we make it so the people, all the touch points that the organization has, whether it's clients, whether it's employees, whether it's people that are affected by the technology that we build out for clients, or whether it's anybody that has any sort of engagement with TekRevol, how can they take more out of it than they're giving in? And in essence, that was it. Like, I mean, there was nothing new that we were doing. There's agencies are a dime a dozen, right? Like, you pick up a rock and you'll see like 10 agencies. So it was a very cluttered market, and it was very risky to kind of build something into it and put in a lot of energy into it. But I think our ethos is basically what kept us growing, because we're not just a tech company that has grown exponentially, but we're also a tech company that has had more partnerships come out of it with clients, with employees, with other engagements that we've had, where we were actually sort of built out other agencies from underneath TekRevol and SaaS products by partnering with other outside vendors, clients, or even employees of ourselves. And then additionally, we've managed to scale not just from a revenue perspective, but in terms of net promoter score, in terms of reviews that we have online, which are massive, as some of our vendors that we work with tell us. So I think that's just it. Like, we wanted to build an organization where when a client is working with us, they're not just paying us, but they're actually benefiting from the relationship that they have with us. So that's how we started, I guess. Sorry for the long answer.
What is interesting, it is true that no matter what you do, it can be in technology or the product that you develop, even if the product is awesome, what counts is that you have what you have mentioned. You have a purpose, you have customer centricity, you have a little bit of sustainability, you want to grow through a network of people that you trust. That is awesome. In fact, when people thinks about launching a business, they're always thinking, I need to have like an awesome idea. You have done an idea that maybe on the surface, it looks like, okay, there is a lot of competition. Agencies in the Middle East, in Asia, there is thousands. And they're competing on technology, knowledge, or cost. But what people want, the final customer, is they want to believe what the reason why you are doing this thing. And that's something that is quite important. And I love how you define TekRevol as something that was driven by this idea with or an ethos, as you mentioned before. Abeer, now I want to come back to this part of my introduction, saying that there is a lot of CEOs that may not know what it means sustainability, because they start with this idea, let's do something about recycling, protecting the environment, and they think that that's the only direction that an organization can take in terms of sustainability. In your own words, how would you define it?
I think, like, I mean, we can look at several dimensions of sustainability, but the three main sort of ones are obviously social sustainability, economical sustainability, as well as the one you define, which is environmental sustainability. And it's okay to kind of focus on one and ignore the others, but in terms of achieving the most efficient model, I think having all three sort of combined is the right way to go. And for me, sustainability isn't just sort of protecting the planet, which is ultimately what we need to be doing at this point, because the conversation has shifted from it's going to happen in the next 100 years to it's going to happen now. So I think there's definitely and it's not just from a standpoint of you're a do-good person, right? Like there's grants, there's just the PR side of it, there's the component of having that built in within your culture. That's also very, very important, and I think kind of teaches people how to use the resources that they have at their disposal to the most extent. So yeah, it's definitely a mindset, like we were sort of discussing earlier on, and I'm stealing some of your comments here. Sorry for that, but yeah,
Don't
I
worry,
think it's
Abeer.
right. Like you have to kind of think of how can we sort of integrate that within our process? How can we integrate that within every touch point that we have in the organization? So, the goal keeps being propagated, right? Like the idea here is, instead of looking at the short-term benefits of doing something, how can you make this a longer standing legacy, right? Like, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a legacy which propagates by itself. And for that, you have, and we can probably get into it more detail later on, but you have to look at all three components in order to build a long-term successful venture. And sustainability, all by and large, is the cornerstone of that.
Hmm. So what you're saying, in fact, is almost translate that you can make a shit lot of money and still have a purpose that is driven by sustainability. Now, how can what have you observed in organizations in terms of their practices to still generate and expand, sometimes even expand exponentially, like your company, and still be sustainable? What are the practices that help organizations be efficient at generating profit and still have a sustainable purpose, something that for the long term and provides something good for the society?
Yeah, and let me rephrase what you said. It's not just making a shit ton of money, it's also making a shit ton of money for a longer period of time. And when we look at that sort of definition, I think I would look at maybe like, sort of like not a Venn diagram, but like a circle, right? So on the outskirts of that circle is survival, right? Like, you're not going to exist if this planet does not exist for the next 100 years. First part. And whatever impact you're having, you can't ignore it. It's everywhere around you, right? Like there will come a time next 20, 30 years later where your cash flow is going to be affected if you do not have a sustainability effort that is moderating that. If your carbon footprint isn't under a certain threshold, you're going to be taxed more. And there are conversations that are happening in the legislation around that. And if you have that, then you're going to be taxed less, so you get to make more money. So there's the survival aspect, like I mentioned, do or die, and then there's the aspect of sort of intrinsically looking at how much of wastage do you have? Like, it could be wastage in terms of man hours. It could be wastage in terms of, investments that you're making by paying consultants that have zero, equity coming in. It's sustainability in terms of your resources. Are you training, the resources, or are you, for lack of a better word, recycling them again and again by getting new people in and old ones out? So how sustainable is your organization in terms of intellectual capacity? How sustainable is it in terms of your resource utilization? How sustainable it is in terms of carbon footprint or output that you're producing? So we have to look at all these different components to, sort of define a strategy moving forward, and then stick with it. And like I said, it's a long-term gain. Like, business isn't just, and I feel like here entrepreneurship kind of gets a very, very bad rep, where when we talk about entrepreneurship, we look at, the Mark Zuckerbergs of today and all, and then we think of success as this, sort of like sort of exponential chart that is just going up and up, right? That is not the way to look at long-term progress. Like, if you look at the Apples of the world, or, where sustainability goes to an extent where even if the CEO dies, the organization keeps growing, and more. That the kind of, I read this book a while ago, and we were having a discussion with my partner. It's called Good to Great. I don't remember the name of the author, but one of the points in it is very sort of interesting when you look at it. Organizations that become great from good, they're good organization, but when they become great is when they become leadership agnostic. It doesn't matter who's wearing the crown. The whole idea of this is to be self-propagating. When we look at the US as an example of a thriving economy, there've been several going forward, no matter who sits on top, because the ideas are what keep going and they keep scaling. So I think sustainability also kind of goes into how long-term your growth is as a company. And I think with the focus on short gains, we need to come back to the idea that, hey, that's key, and that can only happen if you're, like I said, your ethos are represented, and they're embodied people that you care.
There are a couple of elements that I heard from your side, Abeer. And one of the elements is the element of efficiency. And I wanted to ask you, so can technology help this efficiency in order that this efficiency expand through the organization? That's part one of my questions. So technology helping this economical sustainability in order to be more efficient on the way we do things at work. And then you have touched about culture, but I will keep the culture question for the second part for a little bit later. So can technology help in order to become more efficient in all operations at work?
Yeah, and I think I sort of covered this in an earlier conversation that I had, because, and I don't shy away from it. I think, and I kind of want to go back to it because a good reminder for economical sustainability, where we made the same mistake that other companies probably do when they scale fast. 800% growth in 4 years is massive growth, and I'm sure that there are several other companies out there that have had the same sort of engagement. The difference being with us that we are self-funded, so we don't have investors to go back to and say, hey, we need more money, because we're just growing fast, and we don't have the fund. So when when I think last year when the COVID bubble sort of busted and everything started to come down, we realized that we have massively grown in terms of cost, and we don't have the efficiencies that we once had to sustain the cash flow for a longer term. So one route was to do massive layoffs, which is obviously the favorite for most companies out there, which is what they did, most of them, to stay profitable. But like I said, it's not sustainable. It gives you a bad rep. Sort of, it just doesn't feel good, right? The other option was to look at how can we become more efficient by utilizing the resources that we have using tech, which is what we sell to other customers. But we, unfortunately, it's kind of the statement where, I think it has to go with the dentist having the worst teeth or something along those lines.
Indeed.
Like, what you sell is something that you generally don't adopt yourself. So, but it was a good wake-up call for us. So we were able to scale, our marketing efforts by automating using ChatGPT, ChatGPT's API, which is OpenAI. And we were able to incorporate, the OpenAI system into our QA process, into our development process, into our design process, into our marketing process to increase the output instead of trying to reduce the input, which is the resources that we have. So I think that is one thing that we learned the hard way, that you need to be looking at how to most efficiently drive the outcome that you're looking at. Every business has this objective function, which is to define, what is your X, which is your input in terms of your staff, what is your Y, which is the input in terms of the efforts that you're putting in, the man hours or whatever, and what is your Z, which is the output, which is your revenue. So we figured out how to tweak those metrics by incorporating automation. So for example, and I can be more explicit here, in SEO, we had a lot of off-page activities that were going on by backlinking and sort of increasing our DR and DA and the output that we're producing in terms of content, outreaching to influencers, outreaching to high DA websites. We entirely automated that, and we're able to decrease our total output from a week, which is what it normally took to get the links on board, to about an hour we were able up. So that is a huge impact in terms of sort of increasing our outbound marketing. And every company, when we look at when you come on as a consultant and we look at their company and look at what kind of output can be driven from a technology perspective, there's a lot that can be done in terms of making your entire organization more efficient, but just using what you have and augmenting that by AI, by tech that can connect different systems. And I think one of the other things that we really loved that has impacted drastically is we looked at all the SBUs that we had in different spaces. Like we have a video marketing agency, we have a content marketing agency, we have a staffing agency, and we have several SaaS products in different spaces. So we realized that, hey, a lot of the target market for all of these businesses are the same. So why aren't we supporting that into an ecosystem built in where it's end-to-end? A customer comes to us, they don't have to go anywhere else for any of the other services. We can give them certain credit hours to induce a referral mechanism and sort of gamify the entire process of them using us for other services as they go along. By integrating that ecosystem, we saw, I think, about a 3x return on our revenue over a span of 6 months. It was a little bit tricky to implement it, but I think a lot of companies, they get so sort of held up on the shiny things idea, and they try to build new things. They forget what their core business is and how can that benefit from every shiny new idea. So when you're looking at implementing new activities, what at the end of the day, you have to also realize, does this serve a strategic purpose, right? And if it doesn't, then do you have the budget or original business idea? So I think that's one of the things that I would probably suggest.
What I like about the use of technology is that it is meant to help the human being do things faster. Now, there is also a bad use of technology, which is about monitoring, tracking, and slapping the employee so that he produces more, which is a bad application of technology. So, and I guess here what we are putting into perspective is that if we want to look at the company in a sustainable way, people who are doing white collar job, which is having a little bit of creativity in front of the computer to develop amazing apps or amazing tools, they need to have to be empowered, not to be tracked, not to be with a camera that is looking how much are you typing or any counters, because that is counterproductive for white collars. Are you with me, Abeer?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I think there was a connection issue. Switched the internet. Yeah. So I think, what you mentioned earlier in terms of how technology, and I was kind of interested in expanding on that idea with regards to how companies can essentially utilize tech from a standpoint of the like monitoring or things of that nature. We're so I mean we have a component of that which is we call our SDP, and sort of that's integrated with the process and sort of alignment. I think for me, um, and this is the carrot stick approach, right? Like, so yes, when we consider what people are doing wrong and what they should be doing right, and we get micro granular on that, right? Like, sort of the mindset of it's a certain sort of managerial philosophy, which I completely skipping out in my head the term, but essentially, like, you know at the end of the day, what we want to do is make sure that our goals are cascaded to the individual employees, so they can see the impact that they're having on the organizational success. And then they have, at every point of time, they understand the impact that they're having at every day, and that impact, how that translates into their own progress.
Yeah.
So we have systems built in within the organization where an individual, an executive level individual or a manager, whoever they are, they can see where they exist on the growth path that they have set for themselves. So if they want to become, let's say, a VP or whatever, right? Like, whatever their direction is, they can log into their system and see, like, whatever they put in today, how did that impact their growth towards the, and we have like 2 cycles in terms of growth, so they can see whether they'll be able to grow to this level which they've targeted themselves. So there's ways around it. Like, you don't have to be micromanaging, but you can build certain tools within your system to give you better visibility for yourself, of course, but also for your organization as well. And then it helps with equity adjustment as well. Like, if you talk about, sort of social sustainability, or, even economical sustainability from that angle, that, when an employee knows that they're in the same sort of pay that the other employees, and they're performing at the same level, then it just makes them feel better that, they don't have to have like a degree from, some Ivy League school to be better. It's based on results, and results are what matter. And yes, like, so on the social sustainability part, there are other components as well that we reward, which are part of our vision statement. We want to make sure that we can impact about at least 10 million lives by the end of 5 years, and we're keeping track of that. So these components, when they're built into your strategy and your KPIs, your PSM, then it's easier for employees to see the impact that they're having. Like, last year, we ended up sponsoring a school with TCF, which is teaching 300 kids for free for the entire year. So every employee, no, we have like 300 employees, right? So every employee knows that they're impacting one kid at least for an entire year. And then beyond that, we have drives and training sessions where we send our employees to teach at different places, and get nothing out of it. But then the social wellness of it, the fact that they're helping out, helps them sort of have that same mindset in front of clients and sort of in front of any other stakeholder they interact with. Because at the end of the day, they're part of a better system. They're part of a net positive system. So yeah, I mean, definitely.
I love the fact that, because here we have already touched the area of the social sustainability, but I loved what you have mentioned regarding transparency. I love this idea that people should know what is the salary of my peer, and because then you understand what is the gap between you and that person. There is a lot of organizations who don't say why this person is earning more than the other. And in the existing established corporate world that exists quite a lot, then the fact that if they can understand also their sense of contribution, because we all do boring stuff at one moment of the day. Like if you are an entrepreneur, you have to do some admin, and God knows that entrepreneur hate admin. So if you know how this is contributing to the overall objective of the organization, either you call it objectives, corporate objectives, OKRs, or whatever the hell you want to call it. But if you know that this little thing that you are doing, creating an invoice, has an impact to an overall scope of the organization, that's where you feel like you count in the organization. That this little thing has an impact on the overall thing, and that drives. You have also used the word intrinsic motivation. So that means I'm doing it because I know the meaning of what I'm doing. This is amazing. And the last point that we haven't covered yet enough, in fact, about social sustainability. So now it is about this virality that if every employee has the right motivation to keep on going, then we have the sense of the overall organization as a culture, which is an addition of behaviors, beliefs, attitudes that we have because we start understanding this, why we're doing things, and we want to do it beyond just the salary. So how do you think organizations are doing today, corporations or corporates or even startups are doing today in order to have a culture of sustainability? So that means that we can keep having the same behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs all together, so that we spot the next CEO. We spot so that the organization is not just depending on that person who had the charisma, the ideas, and all the stuff, but there is already people who are on the queue following the leader and getting inspired so that this organization exists in 5, 10 years, or even 20. Hopefully for TekRevol, that will happen.
100, please.
That's
But
good.
how I think the question was how can organization sort of create that. So yeah, so I think um, when we look at scalability, I think one of the key things that we've had since day one is our focus on long-term objectives rather than short-term gains. This is one of the things that differentiated us day one as a company. We still have a lot of things that we do, like workshops, like podcasts, like the one that we're having right now, events and partnership with our clients in terms of pushing out their own applications, submitting them for awards, engaging with our partners to discuss, and this is where Revel Ventures was founded, investing in our partner, in our clients' ideas, even when we see that, this could have a much larger impact with us being on the board. So all of these things, on the surface might look dumb. Like, they're not going to get you any returns right away. Like, they're not liquid. Every effort that you're making towards scaling this business is a longer play. For us, we've always considered a unicorn as our sort of what's the word I'm looking for? As almost like an eventuality. Like, we deserve it. Like, we're not putting in the efforts to become $100 million company. We're putting in the efforts to become $1 billion company. And some of those things that we're doing right now might not have an impact in the next 5 years. It doesn't matter. We're doing this for the long term. So, the TekRevol library that we have, the initiatives that we've taken on in terms of mentoring the people outside of our own organization, by aligning ourselves with organizations like Code Girls, which is bill to create more leaders in the female population in Pakistan, which has a very less sort of working female population. The engagements that we have with the like I mentioned, TCF, the Citizen Foundation, which aims to educate kids in Pakistan, which is again literacy rate is very low here. So the idea, again, this doesn't help us in any way from a business perspective, right? Like, it's not going to make us any money. It's not going to get us anything right away. But you have to realize also that you don't live in a silo. Like, if you just focused on making yourself rich, which is something that we almost always. And by the way, you mentioned admin. My most hateful meeting is finance, because I am not,
Me too.
I mean, it's almost like, yeah, I mean, you should lead from a perspective that if you have a net positive perspective towards business as a whole, money will come. People will understand that, the way you interact with society, the way and trust me, this has happened so many times to our clients where they come in expecting one thing, and then they stay with us because they believe in our mission, they believe in the vision, they believe in what we're trying to achieve, because we're human beings, right? Like, money is an abstract concept. Yes, it's important. It's important to, scale. It's important to have a larger impact. But as human beings, we have emotions, we have aspirations, we have that intrinsic, and that's where the decision making comes in from. Like, if you were the cheapest company in the world as an agency, yes, you'll get a lot of business. Yes, you'll be able to leapfrog some of your competitors. But where does it stop? What value are you giving to your clients? What value are you giving to your employees? So it's almost like I mean, if you look at it in a span of maybe 50 years down the road, 100 years down the road, you're not going to exist unless and until you have had a net positive impact on society. Because one day or the other, it's going to catch up that you're basically just a leech, and you're just sucking up all the blood. So you have to think of how would your impact be more instrument. And honestly, for us, like, you were giving a perfect example, like, the next CEO to be. And we have a leadership program which allows employees to actually take equity in different ventures of our company and essentially be their CEO. So we have already had about 10 CEOs come up within the organization, and the idea is for us to scale it to 100 in the next 5 years. And and this is the interesting part, because an entrepreneur has the mindset to actually create change, to create disruption. And if I think that I know all the answers, if I think that I'm the CEO and I can drive this home throughout, that's the biggest fallacy that you can tell yourself. Because at the end of the day, somebody else might have a better idea, but they're just not given the ownership. They're just not given the authority. They're overshadowed. So you have to think from, and I have this philosophy which I coined, which is called individualistic collectivism. It's an oxymoron, but the idea here is that in order for you to help yourself, you have to think, how can I help the other person, while having this expectation of getting some help back if they grow. So if you do that, then it has, like I said, a net positive effect overall. So I think for me, that is where sustainability comes from, where you think, what kind of an impact would this have? Like, if I take this decision, it might help me in the short term, but is it really helping society as a whole? And if you start doing that, then you start thinking long term, and you start making moves that are more sustainable as a whole.
My favorite part, Javier, is when you say that more than the goal of achieving $1 billion and to be a unicorn is about doing the right things so that you get to the $1 billion. And that's what
The
counts.
right way. The
Yeah,
right way, yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
And what is crazy is that it's still today. I mean, I've been hanging a lot with people in the startup world, especially in Dubai. We were talking about my past life in Dubai, in the startup world, discussing it. When you see already a founder who is really focused on the financial uh, outcomes of their idea, you know that they're going to be failing, because there is something that will will not work. Everybody will is going to want to take a part of the cake. They're going to be pulling him down, and he will not have this ability to adapt to a world that is craving for genuine interactions, genuine positive impact, employees who are doing their stuff because they believe on the leader, but they don't believe in the money because they will not. This money will not be cascaded down to them, or it will be just a fraction of it. So I think the way to get to the $1 billion is better than just having as an objective getting the $1 billion. So I
Yeah.
found it
Oh,
quite impressive.
I think, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was so like I mean honestly like as an entrepreneur you have to be able to enjoy the journey. Like if you're living from a standpoint of, one day it's going to get better, one day you're going to get there and everything's going to be good, it does not work. Like there is going to be death spirals, there is going to be depression, there is going, and I loved some of the conversations that you've been having with other entrepreneurs on your podcast. Definitely should listen, some of the people that are listening to this one. There is going to be hardships. You just have to realize why you're doing what you're doing and enjoy the process. Even if hardships are there, they're there to teach you. You're not going to be the same person that you are right now when you get to whatever it is that goal you set yourself. So every opportunity is there not just to affect the business, it's to affect you individually, you know, and the change that it brings about in you, where you have to rethink, your original, mindset, where you have to rethink who you are as a person and rethink, what you stand for, even sometimes. That is what's required to, it's like trial by fire, right? So it's not easy, and unless and until you don't enjoy what you're doing, you're going to be in a huge mess. So one of the things that you mentioned earlier, and I want to kind of go on it because it's very fun to talk about it, because we're one of the SaaS products that we launched recently, and we're exhibiting at Web Summit Doha next month. um, and I think initially when we started the project, and we built the app, it's a restaurant management system, POS, come POS and come AI sort of, tool, was competing with the likes of Toast and Square and all that. And when we built it, it took about 2 years to build it. When we built it and started launching it, customers were like not taking it because change resistance and all that stuff. And we were not the most cost effective solution either. So what we did instead was we started looking at the environment as a whole and how can we sort of increase our effect within the environment. So we started a society called Table Talk Society, where we started to bring in restaurant owners, bring in influencers, food bloggers, critics on one platform, and started hosting these physical events and sessions with them to understand how the community is going. And this was money spent not towards sales. It was from a mindset that we wanted to promote tech within the space. So even if we're not there, they understand how things should be done, right? So but organically, what started happening was that people started to pitch our services back to their own audience. So we had influencers on the stage that were talking about how ServeEasy is disrupting the environment and how it's going to be the next, up and coming thing and how it's going to revolutionize things. And then on the back of that, we started thinking that, hey, you know what? Most of these staff in the organization in restaurants don't have proper certifications about analytics, about customer satisfaction, that is more modern. Everything that is being taught is like 20 years ago, right? So how do we fix that gap? So we started creating our own academy, sort of ServeEasy Academy, where you could actually get certifications from ServeEasy and put them on your LinkedIn profile. And what that did for us was that it allowed the restaurant staff, which we're training on the weekends, like we have a batch of like 20, 30 people that come in on the weekends, train them, get them certified. And this certification is also accredited by the organizations here in Pakistan that are, that kind of offer training solutions. So that has certain weightage. So when they get those certifications, they're like, hey, we want to use this platform in our restaurant. So then they start pitching our services back to their owners in the restaurant space. And then we started thinking, what else can we do? So we created an app marketplace, a cloud-based app marketplace where developers could build their own product and submit it there, and then they start getting, money from every client that we have that starts using their app product. So that scaled our, our sort of abilities as a product in terms of scaling. And then on the same aspect, we started to engage with universities locally, where we started having hackathons through which we can start scaling the product even faster. So there's a lot that you can do if you look at your environment and how best to serve them. And then from serving them, you get something back. And that, I think, is the perfect example of a socially engaged business.
I love this idea because it's not the focus on the immediate commercialization of the solution. It is in the immediate impact first, and then money will follow, right? Because it changes the life of people, and then these people are happy, and yeah, why not talk about it? Yes, I have seen it very often.
Wow, it sounds like Mary Poppins, but, but I'll take it.
Yeah. I mean, but there is still some people, some companies that are using sustainability as a common word. They talk about it, whatever. They are not genuine, and they kind of whitewashing their reputation, saying we are sustainable because we gave, like a company in tobacco giving $500,000 to for a cause. That is it really true? Is it really something that is? Do they do it from the heart, or do they do it just because they want to buy a reputation? Now, how do we do that so that corporations have this sustainability core without just because they want to have a new reputation, so that they do it for the right reasons and not for the wrong reasons that could be just in the air?
So here I would sort of disagree to a certain degree, in the sense that doesn't matter what cause is there. Like, even if tobacco companies are like, spending millions of dollars to whitewash themselves, so be it. Like, if whatever the reason is, it's helping the environment, so it's good. Like, I think in one of the conversations that Elon Musk had an interview with, I love the guy, by the way. So, I've read everything, watched pretty much everything that he says. So he talks about his impact not just being Tesla, but his impact being actually other electric companies, car companies, becoming electric because of what he did. So the idea was that earlier car companies didn't think it was a sustainable business model, right? So it was an economical sustainability component, right? So social, from a perspective of sort of environmental sustainability, everybody knew that, fossil fuels are bad, but not everybody knew that you could actually make money off of it. So in order for sustainability to become a larger topic, it needs to check the other two boxes that everybody keeps missing: the social sustainability aspect and the economical sustainability aspect. In order for alternative energy to become an actual thing, we need to focus on the economics of this, because everybody understands that environmentally it is the best thing, like, unless you're a right-wing politician, which is like, let's not get into it. So it's like yeah, so it has to happen, but it has to make financial sense, and just saying that, hey, you know what, your next generation is not going to be very happy with you, is not enough for most people. Like we've discussed, like, they're not looking for legacies, they're looking for just making a better lifestyle for themselves in now. So I think, I'm all for it, like, whitewashing yourself, and that's, I think, what the governments are doing right now, like with grants and things like that. They'll give you more money if you're just more sustainable. And we've done a lot of projects with companies that have incorporated that, whether this is to become paperless in their organization, whether it is to use alternative energy solutions, whether it is to define their carbon footprint and sort of incorporate that into their KPIs. But I think this is the right approach. Like, we should be pushing more harder on the other two aspects of sustainability, to bring about the sustainable change that we really need to make it work. Because like you mentioned, and honestly, like, to kind of filter through. So if I And I think this is more so a Gen Z thing where, people want to sort of work in organizations that are more aligned with their values, and some of those values are environmental friendly values. So I think if you're an organization that really wants to make the push and not just look like they're making a push, then try to embed that within your culture. And it's an easy way to look at it. Like, you look at their brand people, you go on LinkedIn, search up any company, look at what some of the people that are in their brand department, what are their KPIs? If their KPIs are the same KPIs the culture of the company projects on their sort of, website or wherever they're pushing it out there, then you're in good company. If it's not, then yeah, it's just to kind of show it. So
I totally get it. So to summarize, what you're saying is that as long as it doesn't matter if you're doing it just for the reputation or not, as long as you are doing something that ends up positively. So, which I totally agree. Of course, but the key word is here is that you are really doing it, and there needs to be a consistency between what you claim and what people are actually doing inside of the inside of the organization. It happens like just thinking out of the box that leaders, CEOs, they have this vision to create an organization that is sustainable. Like, I mean, the example of Patagonia, the the
yeah.
the the, the bags and the sport outfits and so on. So, but how do you think a CEO who has this vision can embed this way of thinking to the rest of the organizations, like that even the janitor thinks about it in the same way, so that they feel concerned about sustainability. And that is not just the dream of the senior management team and the rest of the organization. They are there just to earn money to make their salary. Is there a trick to make that the organization becomes vibrant and just starts getting involved?
Yeah. I wish there was a trick. But I don't think so. It's a very painstaking process that takes years and years. And I think there is no short answer to this, but I think I mean the best way to look at this is um to have a discussion. Like if you're a leader in an organization or you have an idea, um you are the biggest driver of, and it's even if it's not a leader or somebody who's a change agent within an organization. It could be a manager or an executive or whatever, right? If you really really want to make a difference and you want to bring about a change, or you want to establish something where it flows throughout, you have to first live that by example. So I'm if you come to our office, you'll see like a bunch of like plaques everywhere, about what we want to do and our objective and things like that. And it will be fun to just think that, okay, now we've done our part, they're up there, people can read them. But no, it doesn't stop there. Or then, like I mentioned, we have these drives where there's blood drives, there's literacy drives, there's like environmental sustainability drives. These happen like all year round, like at least once a month. And then we have like these sports days and things like that. So kind of, and then we have these entrepreneurship days where we have hackathons and things. So what I'm trying to say is that there's so many other things, like on birthdays and on like every time somebody has a baby or something, we send a gift, and like we send our clients gifts, and we, like I said, we engage with them in their events. So it's small things like these, and they don't really cost a lot of money either, that
Hmm.
sort of re-establishes the culture that you're trying to create. And then I think uh beyond that, like I mentioned before, the culture flows through you. So however you act in the organization, if you have the capacity of being a change agent, right? Like it doesn't necessarily have to be the CEO or the CMO or CTO. It could also be a manager. It could also be an executive, right? So the when they behave a certain way, and that, so for example, one of the things that happened recently, which was super super awesome, one of our employees actually inspired one of our um, you know janitors in the organization to start learning about game development. And I think in a span of 2-3 months, he's now part of our gaming team as a developer. And he knew nothing about coding before this, but he got inspired by one of the admin guys here who handles admin for us. And he got committed to it, and now he's joining that team. And it was something that we started pushing through to our employees, like from day one, that it doesn't matter who you are, what you do, whatever you want to do. If you push hard enough, you will achieve it. And I think part of it actually comes from my own background, in terms of before TekRevol, where it wasn't very I didn't come up from a very sort of, I came up with a very humble beginning, so to speak. So I think, yeah, and a lot of that, a lot of what we do in TekRevol actually goes through that, now that I can think about it, in terms of the goals that I set for myself, like, actually having a social impact and helping people that others cannot help, that they can't help themselves. And if you can embody that into your, and I do feel, and I'm not sure, like maybe studies will eventually be done on what we're doing here, but I do feel like, if you have a larger goal, if you have a larger vision, it helps to establish the right norms, the right ethos, and that carries forward as legacy that you've instilled. So even if, God forbid, TekRevol isn't around, the employees that we have, the partners that we have, the change that we've implemented will keep going on. And that's, I think, the thing that I really want to do.
I think that the whole paragraph that you just mentioned can be summarized with that quote that you just did. Change goes through you. That means that leaders have the ability to empathize, show passion. And it's not enough, like if you want your people to change, to put it on the website or to put it on in the intranet of the on the onboarding manual of a new person. This is my culture. No, you have to show it. People are going to feel this passion that you have behind. If it is about sustainability or another type of change, they will see it, and the inspiration has to go from the top to the rest of the organization. Um, Abeer, I have the impression that we have covered a lot of topics, and that there is going to be different type of people that is going to be interested about reaching you out. So from one side, there is going to be the entrepreneurs about how do you create a purpose-driven organization. From the other side, there's going to be some people, some geeks, tech people who will say, hey, how can I work for your organization? And then there is going to be people like asking, so how can your organization help me become a purpose-driven organization using technology, using transformation tools? How can they reach you out, Abeer?
Well, so we have workshops, every part of TekRevol. The most recent one is going to be in Dubai. The one before was in Houston. The next one is going to be in Miami. These are free to attend, so you can attend these workshops where we discuss the same topics in terms of entrepreneurship and how to use tech to become a more efficient organization, to scale faster, to start up businesses that you have in your mind. Then additionally, you can always Google me. I love saying that word. And sort of find different places where you can interact with me, whether it's through LinkedIn or I don't do Instagram much, Facebook or some of the other channels, or you can email me, Abeer TekRevol. I'm always responsive, or at least I try to be. I am an introvert, so it's kind of hard for me to come out of my shell, but I love ideas, and I love when people, ask the right questions and they have the right mindset. Honestly, like, I go around to these events and networking sessions, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, how can I work with this guy? Because this guy has that thing, that spark. And we love, and then I start pitching to our partners and directors, okay, we have this thing, and I know that I shouldn't be spending more money, but it's really good and it's going to be amazing once it launches. So it's yeah, so it's, I think it's like uh as an entrepreneur, like you cannot just close yourself off to environment around you, and what could be possible if you just open up your mind. Yes, it's good to focus, it's good to stay alert, and have those, sort of, things beside, like, I don't know what you call them with the horses, but I think at the end of the day, you can do so much more. Like, even if, you spend 15 minutes or half an hour with somebody to help them see how to do things better, that's an impact that will help them, and maybe they'll build something out of it. So I'm always open to share ideas and discuss, and honestly just live off of your enthusiasm. So I love speaking to entrepreneurs. I love meeting people who are interesting. So anytime.
I wanted to thank you. Yes, you might be an introvert, but I didn't feel it. But the second thing is that you're an introvert with a big heart and with a sense of purpose that is quite inspiring. Abeer, thank you. I wish there was more people like you, founders who have the same attitude and mentality to drive their businesses. Thank you very much, Abeer, for this wonderful episode.
Thank you, Ivan, for the time. And honestly, there's two of us here, so we can start with that. Thank you.
Yes.